Andrea Brognano. I'm a licensed mental health clinician, licensed professional counselor.
What inspired you to get into the mental health field?
So originally, I was going to school for occupational therapy, and that path didn't work out. But I always loved being able to talk to people, understand kind of what was going on in people's minds. And I've always just wanted to be in a helping profession. So the natural progression just made sense for me to move into therapy. And I had therapy when I was younger, in high school, and she helped me a lot. So I felt like it was something that I wanted to do is provide impact to others.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about Therapy Connection?
Yeah, so we are an online mental health space. We're a private practice that operates online. I started it in 2019, not knowing the rest of the world would also join me online. But I had started it because I wanted to be able to work from home at the time. Um, and I always say, like, I don't have children, but I know I will one day. And I wanted to be able to be home and create a schedule that worked for me. And I started it as a group practice because I knew there were other clinicians out there that were similar to me. Twofold to that, I also was a teacher for mental health first aid. And in that course, we often teach about finding resources in your area. And whenever I would try to find resources in my area, I grew up in Staten Island. So I grew up in New York, and people think, oh, New York, like accessibility for public transportation is great. The traffic is horrible though.
Yeah.
So if I were to tell someone to take, a bus and a train and another bus to get to therapy, that's already impacting them so much. So I wanted a space that was going to be able to provide access. So Therapy Connection was then born, and it grew into a group practice. I had a lot of incredible people that joined my team, and we're continuing to grow each month. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, with some of the tough things for me when I was trying to find a therapist is calling people to see
Hmm.
if they're, have availability or nothing like that. But with
Yeah.
telemedicine, that's been super easy to find. How
Yeah.
has telemedicine, you know, uh, made this process better?
I think a large piece of it is that, especially like yourself, like you said yourself, like trying to find someone, it's people like we service right now New York, New Jersey, Florida, and North Carolina. And we're continuing to grow. But each of those states, we service the state. So you don't have to worry about finding a clinician that like is going to be 20 minutes away from
Right.
you. They could be an hour and a half within your own state, so long as they have that licensure for that state. It's been helpful because people are finding us from towns away. And I also think a big piece of that, the clients aren't as fearful to run into their therapist in a store or at a restaurant or things like that. And similarly, a therapist not so worried about running into a client too when they're doing their own errands. So it really makes it like this beautiful like space where people are not fearful to really truly open up and be seen in public. So it's been great to be able to service more people in that way.
What are some of the things you do to help your own mental health?
So I think it's very, very important to avoid burnout. It's one of the things I have lots of very good friends in this field, two in particular who, similar to me, talk about burnout a lot, especially being a therapist and not burning out. I always make sure that I make time for my family and my friends and put them first, always get a good night's sleep. And I find hobbies and things that are enjoyable for me to be able to do and make sure that I'm making the time each week to do those things. So whether that be date night, even at the house, here or somewhere else, finding the time for that. And I love reading. And I know whenever I say that, people are like, oh, like what's the best book that you could tell someone to read? I never say that because I go to the library and I make sure to stay away from self-help section or like things about psychology. Like I want this time to be about me. So I read a ton of fiction just because I want to like escape that world and escape that reality. So I do that and I binge watch some TV.
Have you seen the stigma lessen with talking about mental health?
I would say that it's lessons, but I wouldn't say that it's where we need it to be. I think a big piece of it, and it's interesting, right? Because I see a lot of youth almost like glamorize going to therapy. They're like, well, my therapist said, like, they're so open about it. The kids are so open about talking about going to therapy. And I truly love that. But I don't think that it's completely lessened yet because I don't think that enough people are fully talking about the understanding of like the impact. Like, yes, I went to therapy, but it also helps my life in XYZ areas, right? So I think it lessens, but I still think that we have so much more work to do. And a piece of that is even advocating, clients even advocating to their insurance companies of why getting mental health support is important because it's only going to help other areas of their life too. So I think it's lessons, but I think we still have work to do.
What are some of the things that motivate you?
I think for me, it's knowing A, that I'm making a difference, that I now have a team behind me, that I need to make sure that I also support, and also just like long-term goals of myself of understanding what is a successful life going to be for me. For me, that comes first and foremost my happiness. So what are the things that are going to make me happy? Um, doesn't necessarily have to be a dollar amount, but what is going to be enjoyable for me. I have a to-do list that is going to be never ending. And I used to be a person that like, I need to stay up until 4 a.m. and get this done. That's not realistic. I'm just going to burn myself out. So I think it's motivating for me to know, okay, I can wrap up the bow on this day and allow myself to jump into the next day and be okay with it because that was a successful day for me.
Can you tell me a little bit about your Achieve with Andrea?
Yeah, so that started in 2021. I started it because a lot of people were asking me about being a therapist and showing up online and showing up on social media. So I started teaching a lot of people how to use social media. And so I created a membership out of that, teaching therapists and counselors and coaches of how to show up online and be authentic. So there's a membership for that. And even from that, I branched off into doing a few other things. As you could tell, I'm multi-passionate. So I opened up space that each year I have a retreat, a one-day retreat for therapists, for us like to come together and like allow ourselves to let go and not burn out. And then I opened more recently in this past year a continuing education department for therapists because we need to get continuing ed every year. So I opened a department so that we have unique different types of courses that people can take, and from there they can earn continuing education credits. So the hope and goal with Achieve with Andrea is to continue to grow. I offer some different workplace spaces, hire me once a month to come in, do some like workshops on overall healing with their employees, and just finding self-care tips and tools. So that I do that. I do workplace wellness. And the goal is to eventually offer a bunch more retreats throughout the year for specifically, I want to work with female entrepreneurs.
You brought up a good point. How important is it for therapists to have a strong support system?
I could not do what I do without the support system that I have. So both my friends and my family, I rely on my fiance a lot. At the end of the day, if I'm, struggling emotionally, I rely on him a lot. But I also have groups of people within the work that I do that I consider my business besties, and I go to them when I'm struggling with something. They don't teach us as therapists how to also be business owners, so it becomes really difficult. So you have to have a support system to kind of bounce ideas off of, discuss, client caseloads with, just giving ideas and saying, this client was struggling with this. What are some ideas that you have in order, we can't all do it alone. So being able to just have a sounding board sometimes is really important because I always tell people when you're keeping thoughts up in your brain, it affects everything else. So getting it out and having a sounding board is going to help your own healing process and being able to push through the day to day.
Where do you want to see all your businesses in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
I would love to continue to grow Therapy Connection. So one thing we opened within this past year, we opened in-home services for children with behavioral health needs in New Jersey. But I would love to grow maybe to two more states in Therapy Connection. And I would hope that Achieve with Andrea, or I know Achieve with Andrea will be having at least one large retreat for female entrepreneurs each year, even if that's a weekend retreat. I know that that's what's going to happen in the next few years. So I'm really excited.
How can people reach out and learn more?
I think the best way to find me, because I'm always hanging out there, is on Instagram. So it's at Andrea Brognano. I'm always there, always hanging out. And from there, you'll see the link in my bio to my different websites, achievewithandrea.com and therapyconnectiononline.com.